Alright, now part 9 is now in session with Sentimental Sponge. So, in this episode, SpongeBob was doing his business taking out the trash. But, however, Patrick comes and he bitches about SpongeBob throwing everything out. Like here are some examples. He bitched about the rock guy that he gave to him like yesterday and all this stupid shit. And Patrick's like, you cannot throw them away for God's sakes. You keep them for God's sakes. Patrick? For what? Patrick, for what? They're just trash. Why do you think they're in the garbage all of a sudden? They're meant to be trash. So SpongeBob listened to Patrick's stupidity because Patrick is a dickhead, of course. And SpongeBob then collects all the trash. He collects his sweat from work. He collects something like chewed grease. He collects chewed bubblegums, used napkins, etc. And then when he comes home, his house is filled with nothing but trash, and that SpongeBob had become a hoarder. Okay, this kind of reminds me of a TV show called Hoarders. This episode kind of reminds me of the TV show Hoarders instead of SpongeBob SquarePants. And his house is really disgusting. It became so bad that Squidward snaps at SpongeBob. He tells him to get rid of all of his shit, and if he doesn't, he will threaten him to call the sanitary police. But SpongeBob refuses, and then he calls the sanitary police. Then they come and they condemn SpongeBob SquarePants, and they're saying it's now unfit to live in, and they have to either throw away all of his shit or find a new place to live. Squidward thanks the sanitary police, but, however, they are also threatening Squidward to condemn his house. Which is very sick, and it's really cruel. It's not funny at all. It's just plain out sick and cruel. Why would they condemn Squidward's house even when he called them on SpongeBob? Oh wait, because SpongeBob put all of his shit in Squidward's house too. SpongeBob balls because he has to get rid of his junk now, and then he takes pictures of them. That's really creepy. And SpongeBob sees him go, and SpongeBob's like, Squidward, take up your hat. And he's like, oh, good God. And then he listens to SpongeBob, and then he says, farewell, my stinky, shitty friends. Have fun at the dumpster. And then Squidward's like, I'm out of here. The hell with it. And then Patrick comes, and he's like, and all the pictures are in Squidward's house, like, SpongeBob, what the fuck are all these pictures doing in my house? And then he said he didn't have any room. And Patrick comes, and he's like, nice dress. Squidward's like, it's a nightshirt. Okay, first of all, this episode kind of really reminds me of a TV show Hoarders instead of what it's supposed to be. SpongeBob becoming a hoarder as well, collecting all shit. How is this funny, and how does this make us laugh? It's just really disturbing. I had no idea the director would be this stupid enough to make SpongeBob a complete hoarder. Because Patrick is a dickhead who bitched about it, and he taught SpongeBob the very stupid lesson and a horrible lesson to keep his junk. Wow. Just wow. Oh my god. Patrick saw. It's no wonder why I hated him in this episode too. He makes very poor decision, and he gives dumb lessons to SpongeBob. This one I think he gave the worst lesson ever. It ended up so bad the police had to condemn his house. SpongeBob, I don't know why you had to agree. You could have man up and say, Patrick, they're not to keep. They are falling away. You didn't have to listen to that dickhead, SpongeBob. He's a dickhead. So yeah. They should have done a much better job. Made SpongeBob a much more of a fighter rather than a hoarder. Like fighting against Patrick and saying no instead of agreeing it. Cause that's stupid. Cause when you see trash, they are trash and they are meant to be thrown away, not to keep. So yeah, bottom line, this episode reminds me of a TV show, Hoarders. And it was very disturbing. This episode is downright disturbing and gross. Alright, moving on. Little Yellow Book. Okay, in this one, Squidward is more of an asshole instead of a likable character. It all starts out very peacefully until a customer comes and he's like, I want a Krabby Patty, please. And Squidward yells at SpongeBob, but SpongeBob's not here because he was sitting there with his diary laughing, and Squidward comes and he yells at SpongeBob, and then he tells him, get it together. We got so many customers bitching about the Krabby Patties. So SpongeBob finally makes a Krabby Patties. Squidward all of a sudden wants to read SpongeBob's diary. So what does he do? He gets the book and then he reads all of SpongeBob's secrets. Of course, it's really disturbing and it's really creepy. So Squidward reads everything of what SpongeBob had written. And the most stupidest part of all is whenever SpongeBob sees played, he plucks like a chicken. And then he takes all of his clothes off and dances in his underwear. And when SpongeBob finally sees what's happening, he's like, how dare you, Squidward? And then he runs out of the Krusty Krab crying. But Squidward is very proud of himself for what he done. Instead of feeling remorseful, he just feels very proud. And everyone hates him now because Squidward had become the biggest asshole by reading SpongeBob's diary. And Squidward remains cold-hearted in this episode. He remains cold-hearted. He doesn't feel any sympathy or affection or warmth. He just stayed straight up unkind. He just gleefully walks out of the Krusty Krab without noticing that SpongeBob is crying. And he reads it, and that SpongeBob is now devastated. He's like, ha ha! I ruined his life for good. Ha ha! Squidward, why did you do that? A lot of people hate you for this now, Squidward. And then Squidward comes to his house, but then he loses his house for his heinous action. And now he had to sleep on the bench, and the 2 police found him, and now his ass is cooked. And then he's now being punished. And Patrick comes and he's like, fuck you, diary reader. And he's like, what? You read it too? And SpongeBob comes and Squidward's like, please forgive me. And SpongeBob's like, for what? I have my very own real personal diary. And the angry mob comes and he's like, now, don't be mad at Squidward. He apologized and he won't do it again. Yeah, right. Squidward actually reads SpongeBob's actual diary, and SpongeBob was like, how dare you, Squidward? And he runs, and Squidward remains unkind, not caring about it. And he's like, I don't give a dog's ass. It is so worth it. And everyone hates him even more and throws tomatoes at him. Guys, this was a very mean-spirited episode. The director... Oh my god. The director did such a very shitty job with this episode. They made Squidward like this bully that actually reads a diary that can ruin someone's life for good. And reading everything that's supposed to be a secret and revealing them? That's awful. Why did the directors and anybody harm themselves doing this in the first place? Why did they harm themselves doing this? That's awful. This and the jokes are they're just offensive. And this episode teaches kids a very bad moral and a very bad influence. And Squidward was a very bad character in this episode. Normally, I would say SpongeBob is the most childish in seasons 5 through 9, but after seeing this, I realized that in this episode, Squidward was actually a very bad character. He was cold-hearted, he was unkind, and he was very proud of himself, and he was very selfish. He didn't care about SpongeBob crying. He didn't apologize. He just wanted to be an asshole for the sake of being an asshole. And no wonder why people hate him, and he lost his home and everything. Wow. This was such a nasty episode. This is a heartless episode and very despicable. This was the worst thing I've ever experienced. This is my second worst SpongeBob SquarePants episode ever. It is that bad. It's cold-hearted, it's despicable, it's offensive, it's insulting, and it's very mean-spirited. Little Yellow Book is obviously one of the worst SpongeBob SquarePants episode ever. And with Squidward being an asshole, he remained an asshole throughout the entire episode without a care in the world or feeling remorse. This episode was just terrible. Absolutely terrible. Okay, the final part will be in session, so stay tuned.